Kiwis love a thirst. Like Finn, we're making waves. Generate. Switch online today.
Honey Hireme-Smiler, Honey Bill Williams, welcome to my podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Dom. Can't wait to get into it.
This is a podcast first. In over 200 episodes, you're the first person that's come straight from the dentist.
I know. I feel like it's wearing off, so if I'm slurring a bit, it's not because I've been on the juice.
Although, I've done so much research on you, it wouldn't be out of character for you to be pissed before midday. I'm so excited about this chat because I feel like I know so much about you, and I've got so many cards here with notes on because there's things that I know I can ask you that are going to give us good answers, like the time you had 2 bottles of port before midday. All the time you stole your dad's tractor to do a booze run.
Oh, yeah.
But then there's things that I don't know about you that I'm curious to ask. But it's just so amazing to have you here today.
No, I really appreciate it, eh? And on the 2 bottles of port, so that was 2 bottles before lunch. Considering I started at 11, I think I finished those by 12, and then I think I polished off another 3 after that. So that's quite a bit of a record.
Oh my God, 5 bottles in a day. You had a very good reason though. This is when you just found out you missed out on going to the Rio Olympics.
Yep. So I took the phone call, and I just saw. It's funny. I saw red. I don't even drink port. I don't know why. That was my choice of poison that day, but it was. Maybe I was seeing red. I was going through so many emotions of not being selective for something that you tried so hard to make, and with good reason. Now I suppose in hindsight, when I look back, you're like, fair enough. I wasn't 100%. I was carrying an injury, and I wasn't up to it. But yeah. 5 reds of port will help you deal with that real quick.
Because in the book, you didn't talk about the 3 bottles after lunch. No. Thanks for that exclusive. So, who is Honey Hireme-Smiler? Well, I've got some of your sporting achievements here. You won the Rugby World Cup Sevens in 2013, one of our first professional women's rugby players, 2 World Sevens series titles, once won 44 consecutive matches with the Black Ferns Sevens, New Zealand Women's Rugby League Player of the Year 3 times, 4 Rugby League World Cups, winning twice, NRL Illawarra Dragons in 2018, signed for the Warriors but never played 2019, captain of the Kiwi Ferns when they won the Nines World Cup in 2019. I mean, it's embarrassing, the list. Like, I could go on and on and on. But for you, what would your top 5 sporting achievements be, you reckon?
Ooh.
Because there's not, one thing I noticed, and I wonder if this pisses you off, like there's not a huge amount of highlights of you online, and I suppose that's just indicative of where women's sports was throughout most of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think I think it's well documented, like 18 years in the black jersey, right? Well, I'd say 16, well, maybe not 16, maybe 15 of those, a big chunk where women's sport wasn't televised, barely any media coverage. A lot of that was during my unprofessional era, right? So we were paying to play in the back jersey. We were fundraising. I was selling hangies. I was doing all of that kind of stuff to be able to go represent my country in all those different World Cups. So, I mean, I did, have a big chunk of career where, being part of that first lot to be a contracted rugby player. And that was awesome. But, yeah, when you look back in terms of my highlight reels, I always tell people, they're in black and white. As in a newspaper article, there are no sort of video footage of a lot of those highlights, which is why, I don't know, when they put stuff on telly, it's all the same old, highlight on repeat kind of thing. They just do different angles.
Yeah, and you even make a joke about this in some of your public speaking engagements, but it's actually no joke. Like, who would your male equal be throughout the sort of time that you were playing in either league or rugby?
Oh, yeah. I suppose I have to drop Sonny Bull's name real early anyway. And that because obviously, he was, flourishing in his career alongside. And it was just weird how our careers were crossing over. He was initially playing league, I was initially playing league. I went over to Sevens, he jumped in Sevens and All Blacks and all of that kind of stuff. So, we're crossing over, but yeah.
But Sonny Bill Williams is a household name. Everyone knows him. Oh, yeah, he's a boxer as well, and you're a boxer. If there's time, we'll get into that, but I feel like there's so much more of the Honey story to get into. But you are undefeated. Hey?
Yeah, one hit wonder. 1 minute wonder.
Oh, yeah. So for you, sorry to put you on the spot, but your top 5 moments of this epically long career, what would they be?
Yeah, I'd have to go with all my debuts for every single black jersey. Hong Kong being one of those, and that was the Māori, the Aotearoa Māori Women's Sevens team. My first debut over there, that was just unreal. We played our final in the packed Hong Kong stadium on a Friday night, and being able to represent my culture first and foremost. So that was kind of my first experience in a black jersey, was for the Māoris. And then obviously my Kiwi Ferns debuts right up there at the top of that. Had a horror of a first, I suppose, interaction when the ball got kicked off to me. But I think for me, it was the realisation of doing the anthem and doing the haka for the first ever time in that black jersey that I'd chased for so long. Those definitely top 2. The third one, which I always talk about that stands out to me, was that 2013 World Cup where we lost. First time losing the World Cup in the Kiwi Ferns, and that's just one of those ones that I can never lose that memory, because it was a rough time. It was a rough time. We lost. We should have won. We were the better team, but we didn't. And then that Sevens World Cup over in Russia, of all places, playing rugby in Russia in a World Cup. It was super random, but super cool to go out and win that World Cup with our 7 sisters, and then jump on the plane and shoot straight over to the league. So.
We can get into that in more detail later. This is a crazy story. So you played for 2 separate New Zealand teams and 2 separate codes in the space of a week.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
And we're lucky to make both because there was an issue with the flights.
Airports and flights and trying to cross Russia on my own, yeah.
Crazy. What's one thing about you that people would be surprised to know?
Ooh.
I've got a list of 5 here that I can. Can I give? I'll give you a few, and this will give you time to think. You're not a night owl. You're in bed by 8:30 most nights.
100%.
Have you always been like a nana?
Yeah, I have been.
Why?
I honestly have been. I don't know. I wear myself out too quickly, and like the moment winter, I'm a 7:30 in bed because I hate the cold, and I just need to get in my bed. It's my happy place. But I'm not a good sleeper, so I can get to sleep fine, and I can do a decent night's sleep. But as soon as there's one little bird that chirps in the morning, I'm up. I'm a morning person, so I can't stay asleep for long. But that's probably. I don't know, it's always been in me.
You're living life like a senior citizen. I know. Well, Rochelle, your wife, is she a night owl or is she?
We're the opposites, yeah. She's a night owl and will love to sleep in, and she always pre-warns me, the daylight savings has just gone right. She's like, just remember there's an extra hour's sleep, so just because you're going to wake up, don't wake me up. I'm going to take advantage. I was like, yeah, okay, righto, sort of thing. Yeah, she hates it. I'm an early riser.
Another thing about you that most people probably won't know, you once had a job making airline food?
Yeah.
Like plane food?
Yeah, that was super cool.
What was it?
Stacking trays. I used to make it a little competition in my head, how fast I could do a whole flight. So sometimes, I'll do like 1,000 flight and just be stacking trays, and I'd time myself and put the little cups and the cutlery and all of that, and then you got your little bowl of salad and you shoved it in there and sent it off the hot pack, and they'd chuck the hot pack on, and then off the flight went. So I enjoyed that. It was a challenging time, but it definitely made me want to go back to school.
Right, yeah, because this was, and we'll get into this shortly, this was in your bad girl era.
Yeah.
When you got shipped over to Australia.
Yeah.
Another fun fact that people might not know about you, your specialty dance move is the running man. Is it? You used to bust that out at blue light discos?
Yeah, I was so good at it. And I used to always be in the final 2, and then you'd see the judges, who were like my cousins, they were like, change, do something, do another move. I was like, I don't have another move. That's it. I used to watch House Party and try and do that little kick trick thing with my brother where you lift your leg up and jump over it. I was pretty good at that one, but no, I could never do it now.
And your dog understands Te Reo Māori?
Yes, yeah, both my dogs now. I've got another little pup on the way, so we specifically got both our pups and sort of made a really, I suppose, early decision that we'd only kōrero to them in te reo Māori to help us, learn our own language and stuff. And it's really cool because if I'm saying it wrong, they don't correct me. And they're
No
really
judgment.
good, though, yeah. And actually the doggy daycare that they go to said actually they're really good with learning multiple languages because, they had to learn his name. His name's Rongoa. And when I go and pick him up, they're like, Rangawa. I was like, his name's Rongoa, like this. And so they're like really cool with trying to help me to teach him te reo Māori. Yeah.
What have I overlooked? What is there that people may not know about Honey?
I was born with a club foot, and technically that was deemed a disability when I was deemed a handicap baby apparently because I had a club foot, and it was severely club, and so they broke my ankle and straightened it with a cast, and I wore a cast for the first 8 weeks of my life. But it never affected me for the rest of my life. My brother also, so it's actually hereditary in our family. My brother's also born with a club foot, and he also got the cast and the break, but it didn't quite straighten fully, so he still sort of has a bit of a club foot, and both of our sons were born with club feet as well, so yeah, super random.
Well, if you're born with a club foot, is it like different levels of severity?
Yeah, well, see, I know they don't break ankles now. So, apparently they just broke our ankles back in the day and just chucked on a cast and straightened it up. They don't do that now. Like I know with my nephew, they did cast them, but they have these new little shoes now where they just wind and slowly turn your feet in because your bones are so soft as a baby. But yeah, it's super weird.
So you had your ankle broken as a brand new, but damn, that is traumatic.
Yeah.
That was your first serious injury.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I didn't even discover that until I was well into my teens, and I found the little cast. It was just sitting in the back of this cabinet at home. And I was like, what is this? And it was literally that little.
Man.
It was just this little cast that had been cut off my foot, and the mum was like, oh, you had a club foot.
Your parents never told you?
No, no.
They had the souvenir, they had the memorabilia of it.
Yeah, in the back of some drawer somewhere.
Yeah, well, I suppose there's probably no need to bring it up if it's not impacting your day-to-day life, eh?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, they just, I don't know, just decided never to mention it. It's a bit like my name. They never really mentioned that I was under Hireme.
What's your, out of all the things I've got, I didn't write this down as a note because I thought, we've got limited time and there's so much to talk about with you. This is probably one of the least interesting things about your entire story. Not to say it's not interesting, but your real name is Anita?
Yeah, so Anita Honey Hireme is my legal name, but I grew up as Honey Hunter at school my whole life. And it wasn't until I went to sit my licence that I discovered. I knew my first name was Anita and that I went by my middle name, Honey. But I never knew that I was under Hireme, which is my mum's surname.
Right.
And, I know I went through school as Hunter, so, yeah, it all got
when you found out, was it like a bombshell sort of thing or just like a...
No, it was just more annoying because I was just trying to get my licence. And then my dad was like, we had to drive, we lived in Patara, you had to drive all the way to Tukaro Courthouse to change it. It was going to cost $150. And we're just like, we didn't have that money. So Dad was just like, don't worry about it. Just go under Hireme. So, yeah, it's kind of how it all panned out.
So let's talk about those early years. So you're Patara, born and raised.
Yep.
Patara, known for probably pump water now.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I see you've got hometown to represent, and the big corrugated iron sheep.
Oh, yeah, that's Tino. Yeah, that's just logistical for us.
Okay,
yep,
yeah. What were those early years like?
Oh, they were cool, eh? When I look back now, I think you take a lot for granted. And I only live an hour away. I live in Hamilton, and that's city enough for me. But I just loved my upbringing. I think now I say that as an adult. I think I couldn't wait to get out of Patara as a kid. You just kind of always... You yearned for the big lights in the city and all of that kind of hype, but actually it wasn't until I got booted to Australia for being naughty that I was like, oh, this is too big for me, this is too much, it's too fast. I needed to go home, And then I suppose throughout my playing career, having travelled the world, loved it absolutely, but always have been a homebody, I think, and always wanted to go home. So when I reflect back on my childhood, I love it. I love the fact that I got to play in the street, play on the road my whole childhood until the street lights come on. We knew that was the time you had to get home, and that was the rules. And you played with anyone, you rocked up to anybody's house for a feed. And it's just those real tight-knit communities, right, that everybody was your family, your friend, and you just felt safe. It was a really safe upbringing. I suppose, in a sense, living in those small towns.
Yeah, because you're probably, how old are you now? What are you?
40 plus.
Hey?
40 plus.
I'm
not 45.
I'm 50. Oh, yes, I'm 52. I'm thinking you're probably close to being one of the last generations to grow up without the internet.
Yeah, well, we had the dial-up, so
Right.
we had the little, plug it into the phone port thing, and it made that little sort of noise, and then you connected. So yeah, I used to burn CDs. That was kind of my thing. Like, I loved music growing up, and so my dad and them, had rows of CDs. So then I was the one that burnt off all the CDs for them and made all these mixed CDs. I love that sort of stuff. But I had trays and trays of tape decks as well. So. Yeah.
Oh, old school cassette tapes.
Yeah, I love them.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the mixed CDs. Didn't some girl steal your mixed CDs and you broke into it, smashed her car window? And...
Yeah. I was very protective of my music. Don't touch my CDs. I spent a lot of time on the computer, illegally burning those off.
So why were you so angry?
I was pretty angry. I don't know.
Why? You talk about your upbringing a bit in the book.
Yeah.
Like the picture that you've just painted, it sounds kind of idyllic in a way and kind of cool. But from reading the book, it sounds like, correct me if I've got this wrong, but it sounds like Monday to Thursday, awesome household, fairly standard. And then Friday to Sunday, mum, dad are drinking, and it was kind of chaotic.
Yeah, it was, to be honest. There was a lot of domestic violence, and I think that's possibly, it's a little bit, I suppose, monkey see, monkey do, and that's where, I suppose, the anger developed, quite deep-seated inside me from a young age, and seeing the domestic violence, we got beat a lot, and it was kind of normal back then. I mean, I don't condone it, but, it was normal for us. Like, we got strapped, or we got the wooden spoon often. I mean, me and my cousins, we laugh about it now, but it was just, really normal. And then, and alcohol was huge in our house and huge in our community. So my parents, they drank heavily in the weekends, and then, the fighting and arguing and all of that would come home to whoever was babysitting us, or whether we were there or not. And it was rough, So for me, I was the eldest of my brothers, and we were sort of just always in that heightened state where we were like, oh man, what's going to kick off tonight, So there was that fear that we grew up with, and it was normal, I suppose, for us to wake up in a house that had been smashed up, our TV had been broken again, and it was just so much going on in the middle of the night, and we often got picked up. So often, whether it would be myself or my younger brother, would run out and just call the cops up and be like, come and get us, they're fighting again. And then they just kind of got used to kind of dropping us off either back at our grandparents or wherever else our aunties and uncles, or, just for a bit of saving time. And then kind of Sunday morning, everyone sober up and we're back home again.
So Monday to Thursday, it was always good and fairly peaceful?
Yeah, like my parents, they worked really hard, They both worked full-time jobs. We kind of, we only lived around the corner from school. We got ourselves off to school on our own, my brother and I, and it was fairly normal upbringing. But yeah, it was just those moments, and they were heavy drinkers, and so that's kind of what we knew and saw. So
it's funny how you think they would have got their shit together, because it sounds like they were quite successful. Like, your dad has his own business. You end up having like a beach house somewhere as well. So Monday to Thursday, they were kicking ass.
Yeah.
You think at some point they'd go, the alcohol is not serving us well.
Yeah, and I think, and I think back then it was kind of normal. Like, my mum never hid the fact that she drank right throughout her pregnancies with us, and that was kind of normal. And she used to joke and say, we were born in a pool of alcohol kind of thing, and we'd just crack up thinking that was funny. I mean, they definitely got their shit together. They were young parents too, and I think Mum was 23 when she had me, and and then my brother and my other brother straight not long after. I think once we sort of hit those teenage years, they sort of, things kind of settled a lot at home, and I suppose that, there was a lot of growth and a lot of learning done by us as a whole family unit, but there was definitely some ugly times that were rough to deal with.
Sounds like your dad's like a completely... Your mum, unfortunately, is not here anymore, and we'll get into that. But it sounds like your dad's like a completely different person now. With that in mind, how is he about the book?
Yeah, he was good. Yeah. Like, we had
or...
Not necessarily embarrassed, but, there was a lot of honest conversations that Dad and I had, and it actually probably took the book for us to actually have those discussions. When we were going through the draft pages and that, I sent him, a couple of those pretty tough chapters and that, and we met up and had, a pretty big conversation and a few tears, and we'd never discussed it. So it was like it took for the book for us to actually have those conversations, and I only tell my truth and how I remember it, but actually hearing Dad's point of view actually gave me a different take on it. So there was lots of things I actually decided, I'm gonna take that out of the book, because I think how I interpreted it as a young kid wasn't necessarily how maybe things panned out from hearing my dad's version. But back then we just, and we were probably that family, we didn't talk about our feelings, we were just kind of that, just shut up and do what you're told kind of thing. So, yeah.
It just wasn't done at the time.
Nah.
I had a very normal middle-class Pākehā upbringing, but there's still parallels, like the heavy drinking in the weekends, spanking. Feels like I was getting smacked all the time, with Dad's belt. And he'd always say, this is going to hurt me more than what it's going to hurt you. And it's like, no, it isn't.
Yeah.
It's hurting me a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty sore.
Yeah. Yeah, you said there were tears when you ran through the book with your dad, like tears from you and him, or just you? Or
I think from both of us,
Had you seen him cry before?
I had, and probably actually only just when my mum got sick, actually. Oh, and I suppose as a younger, I'd seen him, a little bit upset. But yeah, that was a real healing process, I think, going through the book and having those conversations with my dad were really cool. And my brother as well, because I initially sent the chapter to my brother and said, hey, look, have a read of this. Like, is this how you remember it? And it was really interesting, right? Because as I was having these conversations with Suzanne, they were bringing up stuff that I'd never spoken about for years. And so the first draft was harsh. It was harsh. Like, I didn't realise how angry I was about all of that stuff. So when I had to read it physically on paper, it's like, whoa, like this is actually hurting me, which is why initially I sent to my brother and then to my dad, because it's like, look, the intention of the book is not to hurt anybody, it's to tell my truth, but this is coming across pretty harsh. And so we did. We pulled some stuff back out of respect for my family, but also for myself, because I thought actually I probably needed to go through that for it to actually be said out loud and to read it on paper, but it helped heal in a way. Yeah.
You're a better child than me. I put a book out called Childhood of an Idiot, which is just like some stories and reflections about my childhood. And I didn't let anyone read it. I just wrote it and got it out there. And Dad called me, goes, oh, it's a great book, but it's I saw it in Paper Plus in the biography section, and he goes, I put it over in fiction.
Right. Okay. That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
It's a good, fabulous work of fiction, son, he said. And it seems like the big incident, like the pivotal moment in your family, the turning point was when you were 16 and you had this fight with your dad? Yeah,
that was a huge point, and Dad went away and did a little bit of time after that incident, and that was hard for us. After that, I pretty much sort of, I wouldn't say I permanently moved out, but I was in and out of my grandparents' house quite a bit anyway. But yeah, that kind of solidified me, kind of moving on, and that really sent me on another pathway. That's when I really dug my heels in and just started rebelling big time. I turned to alcohol, I turned to drugs, I turned to anything, just to kind of numb that, because I was hurting, like I loved my family, they were my absolute rock. And it was really funny, I used to get real pissed off, right, because people would go, oh, you're just like your dad, and I'd be like, fuck, no, I'm not, sort of thing. But then I'd, reflect and look at myself, I'm like, yeah, you are, man, like you're so angry. And I just didn't know how to cope with that and deal with it. So alcohol, it was again just another case of, oh, well, found alcohol was going to help. And I was going out and I was hitting people, I was looking for fights. I wanted to be this big time macho. I wanted to prove, I wanted to prove that I was strong, that I was better than that, and I wasn't going to get beat,
Yeah. When you reflect on that 16-year-old version of yourself now, like, oh no, like is it with compassion or sadness, or like she couldn't? It was unprocessed emotions, eh?
Yeah, I think I look on it with a bit of shame, with some shame, shame but understanding. Like sometimes I go home and I just kind of have to hold my breath when I see people, that maybe I've done wrong by, or And I just kind of think, oh, far out. Like, I hope that, that they've got some forgiveness in their heart for what I did back years. And most people are like, Honey, it's so good to see you. Like, they've forgotten it. Whereas I still kind of have held on to it. Like, oh, man, I remember. And that's where the shame comes up for me. So I remember the first time, like, not long after I had made the Blackburns, and the Potato Rugby Club asked me to come back and be the guest speaker for their prize giving. And I was like, oh, man, I don't know about that. Like, I've done some bad shit. And I hadn't been home for a little while. And I was like, oh, yeah. And so I said yes, because it's like, they're good people. And so how I started my speech was by apologising. I was just like, you know what? Before I start saying anything about my rugby career and what I've done, I mean, you guys have all followed my career. I started here. I just want to apologise. I want to apologise to everybody in this room that I've done wrong by, and that's whether I'd robbed them, whether I'd pinched their car or, gone to a party and kick something over at their house or whatever I'd done, because I was so loose back then, and I was rebelling, and I just had this huge chip on my shoulder, and I just didn't care. I was just lacking a whole lot of respect for my hometown, and I just thought, that I didn't give a shit. Yeah, I was that kind of teenager. My ego was so big, and I just thought I was bulletproof, and I owed nothing to anybody. So yeah, that was a big apology, and it was received really well. I mean, they laughed about it, and I was just like, okay, cool then.
Yeah, well, why was your ego so big?
You know what? I think I was just struggling a little bit with everything, with life and what I was doing with my life, and trying to figure that out. Like, man, when you hit puberty and you're trying to figure out where you're going in life, and my happy place was always on the footy field, but I knew that. Well, I thought at the time that was never going to be a career for me, and so I just was lost. And I knew I always wanted to be something great. I just didn't know how to get there because there was never a pathway for me that I knew of. And so it made me angry at the world. Yeah.
So you describe yourself not just as the school bully, but the town bully.
Yeah, the town bully. Yeah.
So you got suspended from school twice. And how many times did you end up in court?
Twice. Yeah, twice.
So was one of them before you got shipped to Australia and one of them afterwards?
Yeah. I think I had like what is it, one of those, like when you drink on the street. I had one of those first.
Like breaching an alcohol ban?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I had to go into court for that.
Okay.
And then that just kind of like a slap on the wrist, see you later. But then, the big one was, obviously going in there for assaulting another female who was 5 years my senior, and I'd assaulted her really badly. To be honest, that night's a blank to me. I don't really remember it. Back then we didn't have video, so people didn't video stuff. We didn't have the phones. But the injuries that I inflicted on that lady were quite significant, and enough for me to be charged. And to have to go to court for it, and it was just that was me hitting rock bottom when I knew. I think I remember waking up the next day and not recalling anything, but I just had blood everywhere, all over me, and it wasn't mine. Like, because I looked at myself and I was like, well, I'm good, sort of thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, and then, my mates told me what had gone on, and I was just like, oh, and in all honesty, I was like, oh, mean, like, man, I gave her a good hiding kind of thing. And then the seriousness of it started to sink in, and I thought, oh man, I'm going to be in shit for this. So yeah, it was kind of crap.
Yeah, so you had to. Yeah, what did you get? Did you get diversion, and you had to pay for her dental work? Yeah,
I got diversion. So effectively, I kind of got off. Fairly lightly, I'd say, and I had to pay some dental work for her and do what do they call it, like family group conference, and apologise. And her and her mum came in, and my mum, came along with me. Where I had to apologise and things like that. I sort of haven't really. I suppose I'm not sure where that lady is now or what. I've never sort of been in contact again.
I mean, you could have easily kept on going on that path. thinking, you're the, I don't know, the man or whatever,
Yeah,
and everyone's intimidated by you. But instead, you went at like a full 180, right?
I did.
Was that the moment?
Yeah, that was the moment for me, and obviously it wasn't long after that I got shipped off. I'd already been shipped off to Aussie. I'd come back and then realised that was it. I'd already been shipped off to Aussie because I was already going down a bad track. My first night back, that incident had happened, and I knew I was way off track then. And I think the worst part was that I'd really, really disappointed my grandparents, my parents, and they were just like, oh, we're done with you. And I think when you get a sense of, you're losing your family, your absolute backbone, that kind of was like, oh, I can't do this anymore, And I was, like I said, I was embarrassed, and I just, when people kind of are ignoring you and you know it, and I got that sense. It was like, it didn't matter where I go, people knew, and I just could feel those, the cold shoulder that I was getting from people who I thought, were like my mates and stuff, and they were like, they'd had enough. People had had enough of that version of me. So, yeah.
You talk about that in the book. It got to the point where people are like, we're having a party, but don't invite Honey because she's going to stir shit.
Yeah, she's going to wreck my house. She's going to beat somebody up and all of that kind of stuff. So
yeah. But I mean, it would have been easy for you just to double down and go further into that sort of direction that you're heading in. The hard thing to do is actually do what you did. You ended up becoming head girl at your school.
Yeah.
How did you? Honestly, seriously, how does the girl that gets suspended twice end up becoming head girl? What the actual?
Crazy, eh? Yeah. So obviously when I came back from Australia, I asked my Māori teacher, look, could I come? They were going on a kapahaka trip. I had massive FOMO. I really wanted to go on it. I asked my teachers, could I come back to school? I'd do second year, seventh, and they were hesitant, come on, honey, you put us through enough shit for the last 4 years. We thought we got rid of you, but they let me back, I was like, far out. And I just remember this one teacher. I remember it was only the second day I was back, and I was never an academic, and so I was kind of just doing subjects to get me by and that. And I remember one teacher, I think it was the social services, social studies teacher or something like that, and he was just like, man, don't come back here and you've asked to come back, so make the most of it. I was like, yeah, I am. He was like, no, but really, really, honey, you've got so much potential, genuinely make a good effort. And I was like, I am, and I felt when I said that out loud, I was like, right, I'm going to prove that to you. I was always one to wanting to try and prove myself. If I said I was going to do something, I was always in. I was never a half-pipe person. So I think once I made that, I suppose, mental shift and decided this is what I want to do now. I've got a point to prove, and I just went full circle kind of thing. And yeah, it helped that I got picked up, obviously, with the Sevens. I'd had a good year with my league that year. I got picked. It was the first time I got picked in the Māori League tournament, and so I had things to work towards, kind of thing. I knew that I liked computers, and I'd started sort of dabbling in that. And I just had a bit more of a pathway, and I was a lot more settled then. I'd matured a lot from, getting shipped over to Aussie and getting stuck in this, this catering job where I'm stacking trays. I was just like, is this my life? This is not what I want.
Was throughout these teenage years, was sport always a backdrop?
Big time. Yeah.
Were you naturally good, or did you have to work hard?
I think I was naturally good. Yeah. I knew I was naturally good. And so I knew that from a really young age. I knew as a 10-year-old that I could, keep up with the boys, if not do better. I knew I was standing out in those boys' teams because I'd played with the boys for 14 years and until I was sort of 14, 15. So I knew. But I also knew, I suppose, my weaknesses. I trained. I went to all trainings and stuff, but I wouldn't say I dug deep in terms of that real, I suppose, those effort plays and things like that. That wasn't me. I was your fancy guy out on the wing waiting for that wonder ball, and I'm just going to go running all these tries. I was kind of that player. But tell me to go on the work and go in the middle of the field and do some work. I'm like, oh, it's not really my strength. Yeah.
Yeah, and your fend as well. Your fend. The amount of footage I've seen of your fend, it's like I wouldn't want that hand on my neck. It's intimidating. Being good at contact sport, was that a helpful sort of outlet for any aggression you had?
Yeah, it was. Like I kind of, when I talk about, I suppose, my fighting years and my bullying years and things like that, and then I look at my fend and I was thinking, because I was throwing a few punches around here and there, and I just, I kind of got to, I was fairly, I suppose, tall, kind of skinny-ish, growing up. But I think when I kind of hit like my teenage years, then I got bigger, and I just sort of filled out. And people say, oh, you're a swimmer. I was like, well, no, but actually I can swim. And I just used that strength, I kind of got quite big, and I was, probably a bit stronger than the other girls and stuff. So I just used that to my advantage. I knew how to use my strengths on the field, and those are what I focused on. Yeah.
Can you remember the very first time you got to represent the country?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
What sport was that for?
That was for rugby league. Yeah, that was for rugby league.
So how old?
22. It was 22 when I first put on the Kiwi Ferns jersey, yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought it was younger for some reason. Your career was so long, eh?
Yeah, so I was 18 when I first got selected for New Zealand Māoris, and then I think 19 and 20 I was playing New Zealand Māori Sevens, because those were kind of the only pathways back then.
Yeah.
And sort of, Black Ferns were around, but again, still amateur, and then I wasn't aware of kind of the Kiwi Ferns because I sort of, just didn't know about them. They were there or thereabouts, but you didn't sort of read about them or were aware of them.
Yeah. Did you have any like female sporting role models?
I did, but they were local women back home who I'd sort of grown up and who'd taken me under their wing and helped me along, and they were playing they were playing Māoris and things like that with me, so I kind of had gone under there, but I never saw any female role models on TV.
Yeah, I suppose it would just be like what you see at the Olympics or the Com Games.
Yeah,
eh?
it was. It was those kind of Beatrice Faumuina was kind of, I think, if I recall, Beatrice Faumuina was the first female athlete I saw on TV ever. I was like, oh,
shocking,
cool.
really, eh?
Yeah, it was crazy, and so that's kind of, who so my role models were all males, and that's, I think, why I grew up so frustrated because, I always knew that I loved sport, but I knew there was always going to be like this handbrake because, I only ever saw male role models. So I was pissed off. I was a girl.
So, paint a picture of like women's sport at that time. Like, were you being paid at all?
No, we weren't being paid. We were fundraising. We were, we'd go to teams and we'd get like, I was just constantly running around with these big ass jerseys, and they were always told you bring your own shorts because they never had shorts for the woman, and all of that kind of stuff. But I didn't care, because we didn't know. I didn't know any better, It was like we were just grateful to be there and just wanted to play. So I didn't give a crap that my jersey was 2 times too big or hadn't been washed from the men's that had played it on a Saturday and we were playing it on a Sunday and no one had washed it. It was like, oh, gross.
That's terrible.
It was like, stuff it, let's just go play anyway.
Yes, your now commentator buddy, Kendra Coxey, I've had her on the podcast and she talked about that, like having hand-me-down jerseys from the men.
Yeah, it was just normal. So
but this is recent.
Yeah.
On the big scheme of things, like this isn't. Yeah, we're not talking 50 years ago or anything. This is like recent.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems crazy.
Yeah.
But so did you have like per diems or anything? Like when you went away on trips, did you get like a?
No, none of that. I mean, that was, I think, we didn't, I was probably in my very early 30s before we started kind of getting any kind of like player payments, and whether it was like an overnight or a day allowance or, that kind of stuff. We'd get like $10 for a lunch allowance or something like that and $20 for dinner. So it was like, well, that's going to buy me a pie and a Coke and dinner's going to be Macca's.
But they were flying you business class to all the tournaments.
No way. I wish. Once we got business class and that was on the way home from Dubai because we won the tournament. That was me. We were in the bar.
Wow.
We let that up.
Were you... I mean, women's sports come such a long way in like the past like 20 years or so, but were you and your teammates like pissed off at the time, like seeing the men and how they were treated in comparison?
Yeah, not. Yes, I suppose yes and no. Like we didn't. Again, I just feel like we were just grateful for whatever we got. You know, we were all about like let's just. We did whatever we had to do to be able to play. You know, we did whatever it took to get out on that field, and we sort of didn't really. I know me personally, I don't really bother to get tied up with the. Worrying about what we didn't have, because I was just like, I'm here, you know, I don't care, I'm here to play, and I'm going to make that happen, and it didn't sort of faze me. I think there were times though where, like, you know, we might travel with the men's team and, you know, they're all going the front of the plane and we're way down the back, or we're in camp together and, you know, we're on bunk beds and they're in, you know, the Novotel or something like that, you know. So there was those kind of moments where you're just like, this is crap. But again, I was always focused on the goal, and that was just to play. I was happy to play. Yeah.
We just before the podcast started, we talked about briefly about an old mate of yours, Mary Baker, who you used to play with, who I've had on the podcast, and she talked about some of the trouble she got on tour. What was did you ever get in trouble on tour? What was this was in your good girl era by the time you were playing for the Kiwis, but is there anything there you're prepared to share?
Yeah, I was probably like the first one to do the old. I learned this saying really quickly: what happens on tour stays on tour. And so I was always the first one to double check that you know that those rules applied before we like got on our planes to come home, because it's like, yeah, nah. I mean, I played a big chunk of my career where, you know, we played and we were out the next day. You know, it wasn't about recovery. Recovery was coming home, kind of thing. So there was a big chunk of our career where we were, you know, doing the bus trips and, you know, stopping at the alcohol store and pulling up on the side of the road to take a pee at the back of the bus, you know, and that's what I loved about it, you know. That's kind of what drew me in. It was those kind of vibes, and then kind of when we turned professional, you know, that kind of all went out the window. So yeah.
Pros and cons, with professionalism. Yeah, I suppose that it's a double-edged sword, because you know, without having the cameras or the public visibility, you don't have all this amazing footage of your achievements. But then the stuff that you wouldn't want people to see, that's not there either.
Yeah, I tell you what, I love going back like through my old photo albums, because I always used to have those like little, you know, those little portable camera thingies, and I go back through all my albums. I've got some great photos of us like in Hong Kong and Rome and all over the world, but I only have the photos to prove it, you know. And I'm just like, man, those were the days. Like we just had so much fun, and it was just, you know, just. When I think about it, I just think, wow, those are where I had my best days. And I feel like it wasn't, we were serious, you know, we played so well. We did the job, but we were there to do the job, and we were on field. We were professional as can be. But the moment that was done, we were like, man, we were there to have fun and enjoy ourselves. And that was, you know, that's what drove us to be there. So.
Well, and so you should, because it was kind of a hobby, really, wasn't it?
Like and we were paying.
Yeah, 100%. It was like a budget sort of holiday in a way, because all this is done in the backdrop of like full-time work. Like meanwhile you're working with youth justice, and you're working with kids with disabilities.
Yeah. Exactly. So, you know, a lot of what we went out and did, we were paying for ourselves, right? Or we had fundraised and whatever. So, you know, if we were going to go over there, we were going to make sure that we got the job done first and foremost, and we're going to enjoy ourselves, because we all had day jobs to come back to. The moment we landed back in New Zealand, we knew we were straight back to our families, straight back to being mums, straight back to going to work full time, because it was just how it was.
Was that stressful, like dealing with employers and having to get time off work and just juggling the expectations of, you know, keeping your household running? And
I think the hard part was that we never really knew what we had coming up, you know, like nowadays, you know, the athletes, you know, they get the full year plan, like, okay, we've got these tournaments coming up kind of thing. And so you could plan ahead, whereas we'd, you know, maybe find out 2 months out, okay, hey, look, we're going to go to this. And then, you know, you didn't get selected till, you know, very last minute kind of thing. So it was just about, you know, trying to give your employee the heads up. I mean, I worked for Te Whananga Aotearoa for years, and they were great, especially early in my career. They, you know, really, they sponsored me, and they were like, yeah, whatever, you know, they were just rapt to see me representing our country. So I was pretty lucky. The Wānanga and, you know, a few of those jobs that I had back then, they all supported me big time. So that was cool. You know, that was really important. Yeah.
Did you have a pre-game routine? So you did. How many different sports did you represent New Zealand in?
So sevens, rugby and rugby league and rugby sevens.
Nines? Was that national
And
level?
nines, yeah. We
So
did
4
the World
different
Cup.
sports.
Yeah. I don't know. I was a little bit. I think in my earlier days, I just kind of went with the flow. I didn't really overthink things. You know, I think I just naturally was a fairly relaxed person, and nerves were always good for me. You know, I never really got myself in a twist over that because I thought nerves for me was excitement, and I knew how to utilise that and cope really well. But music was always a big thing for me. Music was a big thing for me as a kid, and I always had a set playlist. So when I'm on a bus and we head into a stadium or whatever, I had a set playlist, and it was my game day playlist, and I knew. And as we'd get closer, I'd had the one song, and that was "All I Do Is Win."
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
I always make sure that was the last song that I listened to before we arrived to a stadium. So I'd always map, like I'm sitting in the bus, I'd map. I'd like to sit at the front of the bus as well so I could see where we're going. And then I'd say, okay, look, we're 4 minutes out from the stadium, boom. And that was always my last song that I wanted to hear in my ear on the bus as we got there.
Who's that? Is that T-Pain?
No, not T-Pain.
Who's that? All I Do Is Win.
DJ.
Oh, DJ Khaled?
Khaled, yeah, that's it, yeah.
And they stay there!
Yeah,
That's a great
I love
song.
that. It just pumped me. I mean, I was there. I never took a field not to win.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know. I didn't shy away from that.
Yeah.
I was all about winning. So.
Oh, that's so cool. What else on the playlist? Just sort of like a hip hop?
Oh, old school. Old school, yeah.
hip-hop.
Like I love Temptations. I love Whitney Houston. I love
Wow,
Nolan
soul.
Sisters. Like real old school R&B, old school Jackson 5. All of that mostly.
Oh, that's
And a rap.
so...
I like rap too.
Yeah.
Bit of Tupac.
Where did the love of old school come from? Is that what your parents listened to around the house? Or?
Yeah. I mean, I think, my dad was right into music and, always Smokey Robinson, all of that kind of stuff, Robert Gray. So I still listen to it now. I don't really get into kind of new music. I mean, I do. But, you'll always catch me playing all the old school. And I'll go deep to the 70s. I love... just all that old school kind of dance stuff. I used to really like the movies, like the dance movies and all of that. So, yeah.
I love some of that stuff, like Gladys Knight and the Pips,
Yeah.
Midnight Train to Georgia.
Yeah.
One of my favourite songs of all time.
100%.
Love it so
that's
much.
me.
Who's the funniest teammate you've ever had in all the sports?
There's probably two that stand out to
Okay.
me. Monkey, who's Maitua Whetarika. She played Kiwi Ferns for us for a long time. Samoan girl. She just walked in a room and the volume went up so you'd hear her before you see her, and she just was this happy buzz person. You wanted to be around her, but she was really easy to like egg on and do dumb shit, and so you just kind of like took the piss and she was just funny. She's just like, she could be a stand-up comedian for sure. And the other one was Victoria Zabriskie-Nafatali, and she was our first five for the Black Ferns for quite a few years. And again, very similar personalities, but they just were just larger than life. They just constantly positive, just brought this massive aura about them, and I love that. And they were so confident. They spoke their mind, and I just love that about them. They just, you're sitting in a team meeting and it's serious, and you're getting the growling for whatever, and you're thinking shit, and you just could guarantee they would say the shit that everybody's thinking but won't say it. They just blurt it out, and it's just like, oh fuck, there they go, kind of thing. And I love that. It's like they kind of I love their personalities.
Yeah, do you miss that? You retired like 5 years ago.
I do.
Do you miss
I
it?
big time miss the team environments,
Yeah.
right? So like, and it's all of that kind of stuff, like playing pranks, like Renee Woodman Whitcliffe. She was like the big prankster in our team, always kind of pulling pranks on people, and just those connections. Like when you're in camp, and you've got that downtime and you're just hanging out in each other's rooms, and it's just that camaraderie that you miss. And so you kind of, and I love seeing it in teams, and they talk about culture within teams, and it's so like. That's probably the biggest thing that I miss, like not being in in team environments. And so you kind of chase that, in life after sport, you chase that, whether it's in your day job or, now I'm, I chase that with my Sky crew when we're commentating, I walk into makeup yesterday doing the Warriors and I see Laura, I'm like, hey, my teammate, and you're always looking for that, whatever work environment. I'm at school at the moment, I'm studying, and I'm like, hi, my class friends, like they're my new team.
Yeah.
And so you're looking for that constantly, So I love that about teams. That's probably the biggest thing that I loved.
Now, who are the best and worst people to share a room with? Because when you were captain, you got your own room.
Yeah.
But a
Love
lot of
that.
your career in these different sports was not as captain. So.
Best and worst. Best was probably Salika Winiata, Shorty, because she just slept all the time. Super tidy. I'm a bit of a tidy freak too, so love that about her. And she was just always sleeping. So sometimes I got a bit bored though, because I'm like, I want to talk, you know. She just slept all the time. I was like, I just couldn't, I don't know how she did it. The worst, and she's going to hate me for saying this, but it's Stacey Waka. So when Stace first come on the Seven scene, you know, it was kind of like that big sister, little sister vibe, and we got room together in a couple of tournaments, and she was just like messy, and she was the opposite of Shorty. She's just bubbly and like jumping on beds and just like this little kid on the heat. I was just like, would you just settle down? Like, shut the hell up. And she's, you know, night out, she'd be up and I'd be like, get the hell to sleep kind of thing.
Was she quite a bit younger than you? Or?
Yeah. She makes sure everyone knows that she's way younger than me. And she's just out the gate.
So the Moscow story, let's talk about that. So you're in Moscow for the Rugby Sevens and then over to Leeds to play the Rugby League World Cup, and so you played like two different codes, two different sports for New Zealand in the same week.
Yeah.
Surely this has never been done before, right?
Not
by anyone.
No, not that I know of. And what had happened was I was able to negotiate with New Zealand Rugby because their event was first. If it was the other way around, I would have got a flat out no, you know, sort of thing. And so I was stoked about that. So the moment, you know, I knew that Sevens World Cup was done, they were happy to release me to go and do this League World Cup. And I was the captain. But there was just this massive stuff up. So New Zealand Rugby League had booked my flights at the wrong airport. And, you know, I had to travel across Russia, like 3-4 hours across Russia to get to this other airport on my own. And, you know, our manager at the time was not for the Sevens, because I went to the airport with the Sevens girls. We'd won the World Cup. The next day, everyone was flying out. They were going back to New Zealand. I was going over to Leeds. And, I was at the wrong airport. And it was like, honestly, I don't know what came over me, but there was no way I was going back to New Zealand. There was no way I was going to miss this World Cup because I had that responsibility. I'd been selected as a captain and I was going there, you know, I'd committed to it. And so there was nothing that was going to stop me from getting there. And so, I just grabbed my bags and took off and just started making my way on my own, carrying 2 big bags across the country to figure it out. And I had to do a couple of trains and a tram and an underground, and you know, no one spoke English, and it was unreal. When I look back now, I'd never do that, but I don't know what came over me. I mean, I bawled my eyes out for half the trip, but it still wasn't enough to turn me around to go back to the airport and be like, okay, I'll just go to New Zealand, and then maybe fly back. But no, I was.
So how old were you at the time?
2013, jeez, I don't know.
12 years ago.
I would have been in my 30s.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's a remarkable achievement. Hey, really? Do you look back and think, how did I do that? not just the navigating your way around Moscow, but like just playing 2 different sports in 2 different countries in the same week. It's incredible.
Well, I think I always remember that year. Like I remember that year in February, and I knew that they were going to clash, and I was just waiting to find out what months were on each. So I'd made a decision earlier in that year I was doing both, and I was going to figure out a way on how to do both. So to be able to actually, I don't really think I took the time to reflect on it for quite some time afterwards, because I'd made the decision early. I knew that's what I was going to do, and I didn't think it was hard. I just thought, I love both these sports. I love both these teams, and this is what I want to do. And I didn't think it was like a big mountain to climb. I had set my mind to it, so I knew that's what I was going to do. I think what really put a downer on it though was we lost. We lost that World Cup. Like obviously we won the Sevens, and I was totally stoked. And then to go over, and I just thought, losing that World Cup just put a whole downer on everything. Like, everything was about losing, you know, and I hated it. I hated that year after that.
When did you lose?
We lost the League World Cup, the final to Australia. And
no shame in losing in a final, is there?
yeah, but it was the first time. It was the first time that we'd lost the World Cup.
Okay.
We'd won 3 before that, and I was the captain. And I talk about it, you know, pretty regularly. But the first question I got asked, the moment that final whistle blew, and I knew we'd lost, from the reporter, was, how does it feel to be the first captain of the Kiwi Ferns to lose a World Cup? You know, and I was like, and that just stuck with me. It's like the one question that stuck with me that whole World Cup. So I travelled home like just miserable. I went home the very next day. A lot of the girls, you know, stayed on, but I never got over that loss.
When you reflect on that question being asked, and in particular being framed that way, does that fuck you off?
Yeah, big time.
It's savage.
Yeah, it's savage. Who
was it? What country were they from? Was it Australia?
It was over in England. Who knows? Yeah.
So it wasn't a Kiwi. So
no.
Lacks all empathy. Just
I know, crazy. Well, you know, puts me on high alert to make sure never to ask a question like that in the role that I'm doing now. That's for sure.
Well, I think with the empathy of being a former player yourself, you just wouldn't, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I'm Buckingham Palace. You got to go to Buckingham Palace.
Oh, yeah.
What happened with you and Prince Harry? Did you kiss him on the nose?
I almost kissed him on the nose. Right. So they brief you before he comes in. They briefed us. So I went over as a Rugby League World Cup ambassador for New Zealand, and they had a representative from each country. And we had this certain attire that we had to wear. And so you go into Buckingham Palace, you got to put all your phones away. And then they brief you. And what they did is they said, oh, well, Harry's going to come through this door and there's going to be, you know, 4 pods. And I was in the first pod and I was the first person in the first pod. And, I mean, things were, that was when Harry had just announced that, you know, he was going to step out of the royal family duties and all of that. So media was like, packed over there, and he was the ambassador for the Rugby League World Cup, and we were doing the draw. So anyway, he comes walking in this big, amazing room in the Buckingham Palace, and walks up to me, and they told us specifically, we'll guide him, we'll tell him your name and your country, shake hands, and he'll go to the next person. So, you know, we're kind of like, okay, that's what we prepped for. So they say to him, this is Honey, and she's from New Zealand. And he goes, oh, kia ora. And he goes to put his hand out. So I was like, okay, here's the shake. And then he goes to lean in. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, they didn't, you know, I thought like kissing's off thing. So I was like, started to stick my lips out. And then he kind of tilted his head a bit. And I was like, what's he doing? He's honging me. So, honestly, the Māori instincts kicked in the very last minute. And I was like, do not kiss his nose, honey. And he gave me a hongi. I was like, wow, that was so cool. And everyone else in my pod was like, what was that? Like kind of thing. I was like, oh, that's how we greet each other in our culture, by pressing noses. And they're like, oh, wow. And yeah, so I was just like, oh, that would have been the worst. And it was all caught on camera. So I was like, I'm so glad that I did not kiss his nose.
Oh, my God. Is there footage of that on YouTube somewhere?
Yeah.
Oh
so
God,
someone caught sort of the footage, but yeah, you can kind of see me sort of starting to pucker, and then I dip. And I catch it.
Because who were you there with? What?
I just went over as the representative for New Zealand Rugby League,
okay.
As ambassador, yeah. So on my own again, yeah.
Apart from that, the whole experience of going to Buckingham Palace?
Unreal, yeah. I was there with Honey Hireme, and he was so funny. I mean, yeah, it was good. There was it's just unreal being in a place like that. I was just pretty blown away. Felt very special. Because
most Kiwis that have been to London have probably like gone to Buckingham Palace, and you know there's the roundabout and the gates, and you have your photo taken. But not many of us get on the other side of the gates. Yeah, absolutely. Like I'd played in the London Sevens, you know, a few years earlier that, and obviously we'd all go there and stand outside the gates and take our photos. So I'd been there a few times before as a tourist, but yeah, to actually go in the gates and go inside, that was cool. Yeah. Man, I've got so much to ask you about your sporting career, but we're on a limited time schedule this morning, so I might have to just fast track some of this. But so we've talked about some of the highlights. Biggest adversities or negatives with 2016, would that be top of the list? Not making the Rio Olympics? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was rough as well, not making that.
Yeah, it was that, we were part of that first group, that Go for Gold, and so it was sort of, a big 4-year journey, and we'd been through some shit in that team. Like, it was really, it was a hard time, but the best kind of thing. Sometimes you go through those things, and when you look back on it now, I was like, man, they'd never put the athletes through some of the stuff that we went through. But because we were new, and we didn't have a blueprint to what we were doing, so a lot of stuff, obviously, we were sort of mimicking the men's, the All Black Sevens, and that was during
hard
times
in terms of training.
Yeah, the training and the camps and things like that. So we were mimicking a lot of what Titch was already doing with the boys, and that was hard physically. That we had the Waiuru camp where they made us dig holes in the ground like graves and sleep in them overnight, in the freezing cold. There was just all these like horrific things they had us doing to try and make us mentally strong and physically strong and all of those kind of things. And we were all learning on the go. So we'd have these honey badger sessions out on the hottest part of the day on the Mount Beach. We were just getting grilled into the ground out on the sand doing fitness, and our feet are all blistered and burnt from the sand being so hot. And they were like, stay out there. Your feet are getting burnt. We don't care, kind of thing. And it was just what we went through, sort of thing. But just in hindsight, I'd take back those days any day.
Would you?
Love it. Yeah. I think, they definitely matured you, and you can see how much growth that I had during those times of sevens. I'm super grateful for.
So how big was the squad? And
I think we contracted 22,
okay,
and they took away 12.
Yeah. So 10 people got the phone call saying sorry.
Yeah. There was a chunk of us. So there was a couple of injuries, and then a fair chunk. That got those very similar phone calls, and
it's heartbreaking.
It is, and it wasn't my first experience with non-selection. We had the 15s World Cup not long after that. I'd been to the 2014 one and then didn't get selected for the 2017 one again. I had another injury that kept me out, and you just kind of end up, dealing with those. I think when it came to my retirement, though, I didn't want to get another one of those phone calls, so I wanted to make sure that I called time on myself, because I think what annoys me the most was that a lot of my professional career, I'm 33 plus, I played till I was 39, so, and I had multiple demons in my head saying, stop playing, honey, stop playing. But I feel like I was peaking at 33, 34, 35, but definitely felt the decline in those last few years. And then once sort of COVID hit, I just knew that was one extra rugby league that was just a year too far away from me, so I knew I was done.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in just a second, because it's like you announced your retirement like a couple of days before your last game.
Yeah.
But yeah, first of all, the Rio stuff, so did you consider going over and watching the team, or was that just going to be too hard? Or
I did consider, because my dad had booked flights and had this whole package, so he was coming over to support and all of that. And then when I didn't make the team, he was like, do you want to take the trip? Like you can go over and I'll swap the names over and stuff like that. So I considered it, but yeah, it was a bit of a rough time for me. And I think travelling on my own, I'd never travelled on my own, so I was pretty nervous about doing that. And I wasn't in a place where I could go wholeheartedly to support my team. I needed that time to sort of deal with what I was going through. So I chose not to go. And my dad got a small refund, but not really, on his package. But I think by the time the girls started playing in that Olympics, because, they went over quite early, a month early, and, by then I'd sort of, I'd gotten the call from the Black Ferns 15s coach to come and join that team. So, I sort of had something else to look forward to. But also, I suppose I dealt with it. So by the time they started playing the Olympics, I knew wholeheartedly I could cheer and support my sisters that were out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it must have been unimaginably hard, though, like the FOMO factor.
Oh, big time. Like I'll be honest, after I took that phone call, I didn't want to talk to anybody, for 2 weeks, and especially not the girls that were selected, because to me I was like, well, that's my spot, and they were my good friends, and as happy as I was for them, I was pissed I wasn't there, sort of thing. So I knew I needed to take myself away from that to, be in a better place before I could wholeheartedly support them.
And what happened at Rio? They won silver?
They won silver,
Were you secretly happy?
I wasn't, to be honest. I was broken, like when they had the footage of them just sitting on that field and, tears and awe. Those tears were so deep-seated in me, and that's when I knew wholeheartedly I was broken for them. I was just like, that's not fair, that was rough.
You'd come a long way, because that speaks of how little ego you had, I think.
Yeah, I knew that I had a lot of, I'd had it so much growth throughout that time, and I was, one of the mature leaders, and I think, I'd started to just, I'd started just to do a lot of inner work, I think, which I'd blocked out for a long time. But yeah, just that understanding of myself, and I started to do a lot of work with David Galbraith, and
DG.
DG. He's our team mental skills doc, and he was great. So he had helped me through a lot of that, as we were working towards the Olympics. So I reached into a lot of that work that I did with him to kind of get me through some of those rough times.
Did you get anything from him that you can still implement in day-to-day life now?
Yeah, definitely. So he always gave me this little model, if you like, or scenario was all about jumping off the cliff, because I think I always held myself back, through fear of failure. That was always my biggest thing, fear of failure. I never wanted to be a failure, and I was so competitive. I wanted to win everything. I was the worst sore loser. But sometimes that fear of losing would hold me back. So we had this thing around jumping off the cliff, and he was like, look, you've got to decide, once you cross that white line, and once you're getting into your red zone, whether it's, say, I'm just absolutely at my breaking point of exhaustion or whatever, that's the moment that I've got to jump off the cliff. I've got to be all in. I've got to throw that last pass. I've got to make that last bit of effort, that 1% left in me to make that last tackle, whatever that was at that moment. He just helped me to recognise those moments that I was going through in my head, so that I wouldn't feed the other, I suppose, demons in my head that were saying, just quit, honey, just stop, sort of thing, because I had a lot of that sort of thing. Once I was able to, I suppose, implement that as a player on the field, I was all in. I also learned, I suppose, how to transfer that into everyday life, and in terms of that jumping off the cliff and not fearing failure. And it took me, it would just take me back to going through the same processes, when I'm under pressure. I mean, I get it now, as a commentator for work, I still get the sweats, I still get nervous and that, and I'm like, right, just, and there's something might be happening on screen, and I'm like, should I say it? Just do it, honey. Jump off the cliff, say it. If that's what you think, if that's your opinion, it's what you're being paid for, tell the people. Tell the people at home this is how you're breaking down a game, or whatever it might be, and it's even things as a mum, and my boys are pushing me, or my son's really pushing me, I'm like, oh my God, kind of thing. And it's that, just jumping off a cliff. So I think I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life, and it's being able to just push past those the voices in your head that kind of want to pull you back a bit, or hold you down, or make those decisions of fuck it, and
I love that. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so your retirement, so you just decided one day that was it, you were done. Because I feel like, and you sort of alluded to this before, there's two ways you go. Either you make the decision for yourself, like a Richie McCaw say, or the decision gets made for you and you get unceremoniously dumped. But you sort of decided the week of. The week of,
yeah, I did decide the week of. So I went into the camp feeling really good, and and we'd come through COVID, so we'd been hanging out to play, and we got the test match against Samoa, Mount Smart there. And I went into camp feeling good, and I was excited. We had 9 debutants. I was part of the leadership group, and I knew all of this. And as that week kind of panned out, I was carrying a couple of injuries, but I was okay. But there was just little things that were happening throughout that week, and it was little things we had all these new debutants coming, these 18, 19-year-olds, Caitlin Vahakolo and the like, so we were coming in, right? And they just had this energy about them, and I didn't feel like I had that same energy. I was like, oh, I'm kind of a bit tired here, and I was just starting to slow down a bit. And then I remember during training just feeling like I couldn't quite hit hit some of the milestones or things like that I was used to hitting and I couldn't quite make the pass, or I wasn't seeing the pitches that I generally see under pressure. And so just little things were happening throughout that week, and I made a phone call home to my wife and I was like, it's cool. She's like, how's camp? And I'm like, oh, it's good. She's like, oh, you don't sound so, hyped. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, just there's something about it. I feel like I'm coming to the end kind of thing. And I decided I had a big conversation with my wife on the phone, and then I sort of thought, okay, look, I think I'm done, kind of thing. And then I sent a text to my family, and once I sent that text, then I knew, okay, now you got to follow through because you've said this, you've got to follow through. So first I spoke to the coach, Ricky Henry, at the time, and I said to him, look, we've got Jersey presentation tonight, and I want to let you know this is going to be my last. I've just, I said, but I don't want to tell anyone. I said, I don't want anyone to know because this is a big moment for these debutants. I remember my debut, and it's got to be about these young players. And so he agreed. He agreed not to tell anyone. I says, we'll wait till after the game, and we'll let people know, kind of thing. And I'm really glad that it happened. There was also a moment during that game where I knew. I was like, yeah, you're totally done, because I could feel myself just mentally. Like I knew when I crossed that white line, every moment I was out playing in a black jersey, I was all in. And I could just almost feel myself out there floating, like, oh, this is nice, kind of thing. I didn't have that fire burning like, right, I'm in there, I'm competing. I just was like, oh, I'm just going to kick back a little bit. So I knew I was done.
But it must have been a strange feeling for you, like having this big secret, but knowing that every time you do think it's the last, every time you walk through the tunnel, every time you're in a team huddle, or if there's a haka or an anthem or whatever, just knowing it's the last, but no one else does.
Yeah, that was. So, and I kept those moments, obviously, all those moments to myself. So, yeah, that ride in on the van ride in, we were on, mini vans and coming out. And Simon Mannering was part of our coaching crew, and he was the driver, and I was sitting in the front, and I just remember thinking, it's my last ride into the stadium, team van, So I was going through all of those emotions and that, and it was like my last game prep, my last game meal, all of those kind of things. So that was, I really enjoyed that. I think I really took the time to be consciously aware of what was going on. And at the time, it was the 25-year Kiwi Ferns celebration. So they had all the past Kiwi Ferns make a tunnel as we ran out. And I thought, this is special, because I'd played with a big chunk of those women that had really paved the way. So I just thought, oh, man, I've picked the best moment, because I wasn't aware that was going to happen either, and they didn't know I was retiring. So that was so cool. Yeah, I was so rapt that I chose that moment.
And then what was it like after? Was it like a morgue afterwards? Like, did you really bring the party down with the news?
Yeah, well, so... they literally announced at the moment, like the final whistle went, and I got interviewed straight away. My family, because I told my family, they did a haka in the stadium. That was awesome. And my team was wondering what the hell was going on, because the players still didn't know. And so we went into the change rooms afterwards, and the CEO had come in, Greg Peters at the time, and he's like, oh, I just want to acknowledge Honey for, announcing her retirement. And the players were like, you know what? And then it was like a morgue. It was like tears, and I was like, and they got up and did a hug, and I was like, don't do that, because I don't want to cry. And it was huge. And then I feel like there was that moment that sunk in for me, like, oh crap, this is actually really happening. But I didn't have any regrets. It was just like, oh, far out. Yeah, so that was cool.
Yeah, you mentioned your wife and the role she had in these discussions. Had your mum passed by the stage?
Yeah, she had. Yeah, and I think a chunk of me had, kind of. I think after her passing and that whole journey and not being able to play for the Warriors, so I feel like things were slipping from me, and that fire. I always talked about the fire in my belly. I felt like it was just slowly dimming, and that was a significant part of it too.
Yeah, because cancer impacts so many New Zealanders. I think the stats are like 1 in 3 New Zealanders are impacted by cancer. But fuck, you've had it rough, haven't you?
Yeah, sure have. Yeah.
So your wife Rochelle, she was diagnosed in December 2020.
Yeah, 3 years ago.
Yeah. And the prognosis was not good. She was given.
She was actually given 6 months in that. So she was diagnosed with quite a rare cancer, cholangiocarcinoma, which is cancer of the bile duct. And she had significant metastases, throughout her. So she was given 6 months without treatment and 12 months with treatment. And we're now coming up 3 years, and she's still chugging along pretty well at the moment, but still obviously stage 4 patient and on palliative chemotherapy. So, we just continue to. That's probably been our biggest challenge the last 3 years, and dealing with that and the roller coaster and ups and downs that come with stage 4 cancer diagnosis.
What does it look like from a day-to-day perspective, living with stage 4 cancer?
Yeah, at the moment, it's we're in our scanxiety phase, so that means she's got a scan tomorrow, PET scan, because she's actually been off treatment for 4 or 5 months now, which we chase something called a stable. Stable is the best we know that we're going to get with her, and so we got stable at the beginning of this year, and we were really, really stoked with that. She's recently just had some routine bloods which have shown her tumour markers have shot up, and I think this time round it's highly likely she'll return back onto palliative chemo again very soon, and this will now be the 5th, I think, full cycle, and a cycle kind of means once a week, going in for 6 hours of infusions of chemotherapy, and we're probably looking at about in the next 6 months of her being back on treatment again. So it's rough, and it gets harder, I think, each round for her, and from a physical and emotional, mentally as well. But this time round is I think, we're prepared for it because we've been here 4 times before, but it doesn't make it any easier.
How do you stay so strong?
I have to. I have to be the stronger one into us, because I'm like, well, physically this is happening to her, so I've got to be the one to stay mentally and emotionally strong, and focused on the end goal, and that's just to, survive and keep surviving and keep fighting. We didn't have a good long journey when it was my mum's cancer diagnosis. In fact, we got 9 weeks from day of diagnosis through to when she passed, and so that always played in the back of my mind that we were going to make sure that we put up a really good fight this time around. It was only a year later, I suppose, when Rochelle got diagnosed. So I took it upon myself to learn anything and everything that I could about this cancer, all cancers, everything. And I'm a real advocate for it, because I hate it. If there's one thing I hate in the world, I hate cancer. It's affected too many people in my life, and I'll do anything and everything to keep my wife around for as long as possible.
Yeah, actually, there's a bit in the book. This is this broke my fucking heart, actually. So page 195. You think you love someone as much as it's humanly possible, but as I watch my wife go through this, I keep falling in love with her deeper and stronger. I'm amazed by her fight, her resilience, her humour in the toughest times. She keeps me strong, and I keep her strong. Then there are days where we lean on each other. As we celebrate each milestone, I still can't shake one dread. Not waking up next to her is my biggest fear.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's a fear that kind of, you live with, and that I wake up with every day. And I'm lucky enough that I do wake up every day next to her and looking and think, here's another day, here's another day. And that's kind of where I only allow my mind to think, we get another day, we get another day. And it's really rough waking up on the days where she's crook, or when we're back in the hospital again and something else has gone wrong. And we've had plenty of those moments. But it just makes me so much more grateful for the good mornings that we get to wake up. And she's going to have a good day. I mean, she's gone back home today to set up an Easter egg hunt for our granddaughter. So, it's all of those like little small ones that we choose to focus on, because, I know that, the stats, they don't speak, very well. And when they tell you don't Google it, from get-go. So they say, right, you got stage 4 cancer, it's rare, don't Google it. What do? You walk straight out of the room, you Google it. And the first thing that came up for us for stage 4 cholangiocarcinoma is 5% of people make it past 5 years. We're coming up 3. And I remember very early on, we made the decision she's going to be part of that 5% that makes 5 years. And we're coming up 3 years. And so we're like, we're good. You know, we're getting there. We're over halfway. And we celebrate every single milestone that we're able to achieve. So, yeah.
Do you, because in your book you talk about not wanting to cry in front of your mum and her brief battle with cancer. Do you allow yourself to cry in front of Rochelle?
Yeah, 100% now.
Yeah.
Like you can't hold it back because we've been through such a shit journey with this, you know, and, you know, even just as raw as, you know, this morning she gets the phone call when we're sitting in the hotel lobby to say, look, your PET scan's tomorrow. And we know what comes. So it's because we've been through it. So, you know, just hearing that, oh, okay, it's the reality of, we know we've got bad bloods, we know now it's a PET scan, we know we're back in the oncologist end of this week or early next week, and we know what's to come sort of thing. And straight away, as soon as she said, oh, yeah, this is Rochelle, oh, yeah, I'll come for the scan, you know, and straight away your eyes just water up because we know what's to come. So, yeah, it's just staying strong for each other too, but allowing us to grieve those moments because you have to grieve it. You start grieving from the moment you hear the cancer diagnosis, without a doubt, you know, but you don't stay there. That's my thing, is you can't stay there, because if you stay there, then you lose hope. And hope is the only thing that's got us to the 3 years, you know, and hope will get us past the 5 years and beyond. You know, we always make a you know, we always every year, or actually every matariki, we set our goals, and we always say, okay, what's our 20-year goal? What's it, you know? And we don't just say it just to say it. We say it because it's what we believe, you know. But we are very realistic in the fact that, you know, we've always had this 5-year goal from day of diagnosis.
Why was it important for you not to cry in front of your mum when she was unwell?
I don't know.
Do you think it would have broken her heart to see you upset? Or?
Yeah, because my mum was so strong in herself, and I think for when it came to mum, I took on the nursing role kind of thing, and I was so focused on that I think deep down I believed she was going to get better. And I hadn't accepted the fact that she wasn't going to get better right to the days, you know, where she's like pretty much in her last days of life in a coma. I still had that small amount of hope that she would come back to us. And so I didn't allow myself to cry, because that would be me accepting the fact that she was going to die. And I didn't allow that. I didn't allow that till almost the night before my mum passed away, when I finally said in my mum's ear as she lay, you know, in a coma state, you can go now, Mum. And those were probably the hardest words.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. But
can you, she must have been so proud of you, because, you were there for her. Like you really stepped up, right? I've seen clips online of you training at the hospital, like running up and down the stairs and just sleeping on the floor there. Like you really fronted up in a big way, and she must have been so proud. Can you remember your last conversation with her when she was lucid?
Yeah, that's probably what disappoints me the most, is because, like, when you're caring for someone that's so sick and you're entrusted with giving the medication, right? So I'm giving her all of her, you know, all her medication, the morphine, the pain medication, the anti-anxiety medication, pretty much the medication that's keeping her at peace, but also a lot of it was, you know, allowing her to rest so that her body could go through the dying process. And I didn't understand that at the time. And I had massive carer fatigue, you know, and I was tired, and I was getting frustrated with Mum because she was so much out of character, you know. She was getting frustrated, she was worn down, she was tired, she was in pain, and she was suffering, you know. And I didn't want to think that she was suffering, because I'm like, well, I'm your nurse. I'm not a nurse, but, you know, I am here to help you. I don't think what I registered was actually what I was there to do was to help her to die. I still had held on to the hope that I was going to make her better. And so it was actually, I think you go through a whole lot of spiritual distress, and that's where I was at, and that's where Mum was at. And so my last conversation with Mum was really pissed off with me because she wanted to go and I didn't want her to go. And I was frustrated with her. You know, we weren't sleeping. You know, she was having really rough nights and things like that. And we were all at the family homestead. There was, 30 of us all sort of there for Mum during those last days of life. And it was actually my papa that said to me, "You have to let her go. You know, she's holding on because you won't let her go." And so that's when I had to say those words, was me actually, because I'd say, "Oh, I've let her go. You know, I know what's happening," but I hadn't actually said those words out loud because I think deep down I knew I hadn't convinced myself that I was actually letting her go. So, yeah, it's an unreal journey, you know, when you get to care for someone in their last days of life. I think it was a huge privilege, you know, and I don't regret a moment of those days that, that I got for Mum. I think it's one of the things that I'm most proud of, how I cared for Mum.
Yeah, you should be. And I'm sure she was as well, because you really stood up, eh?
Yeah.
Even like another little thing, like bringing your wedding to Rochelle forward so you guys could get married in the chapel at Waikato Hospital, just so your mum could be present because you weren't sure. When do you miss her most?
I think I miss her most obviously on her anniversary. I miss her most when we go back to family things. So mum's one of 11 siblings, and I miss her most when I'm around my family because up until a few months ago, she was the only sibling that had passed. Her brother another brother not long passed a few months ago. But I think when I go around her sisters, because they're so much like her and they remind me so much of Mum, and then it's also those moments where people look back at me and they go, "Gee, I thought you were your mother just then." And I'm like, "Oh." And I've that really warms my heart for people to think, "Oh, either I look like my mum or I sound like my mum." I'm like, "Oh, cool." You know, like I don't think as a kid I ever aspired to be like my mum, but now when I hear people, because Mum had such a beautiful heart and she was so caring, I love it when people say that. But yeah, definitely when I'm around family, I miss Mum the most. And when I see, our kids, I've got 2 grandkids, and my nephews and nieces, they don't get to experience Mum's just great grandmother. I mean, had her faults as a mum, but the best grandmother ever. So yeah, I miss her the most those times.
That 16-year-old town bully, like, fuck, she would have been so proud, eh?
Oh, for sure.
The woman that you've grown up to be. Like, what the hell?
Yeah,
like you've really come good.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you proud of yourself?
I am. Yeah, I am. I know. I know I'm a good person deep down, and I think it took a while to dig through all the bad shit to get to where I am today. But I know, like, I've got a good heart, and I see so much of my mum and my dad reflected in how I've been, and I give so much credit back to my family. Like they've always been my absolute foundation in everything. I'm so grateful that I had great grandparents, on both sides. I've only got one nan left. She's 95 and she's still chugging along, and she tells me my longevity is due to her. And she's proofs in the pudding. She's 95 and still going good. And I credit everything back to my family and my upbringing, because although it had its rough parts, there was still those real deep set, I think, things that come through as part of our family traits, and that's in and around humility. I mean, my grandmother was actually Jehovah's Witness, and that we kind of grew up with that religion. Didn't necessarily follow it, but in the times that I've lived with my grandparents, I had to go to church. It was part of it, and I think that gave me some grounding too. But my parents were very hardworking. They were very humble, and so I'm grateful that those traits come through.
Yeah, I think you have to show some grace. Like they did the best they could with the resources they had at the time. Yeah. My God, we've got there's another studio booking, so we're gonna have to get out of here soon. We haven't talked about the New Zealand Order of Merit. We haven't talked about your boxing. We haven't talked about the commentary stuff at all.
Yeah.
There's so much, so many strands to your story, right?
Yeah, I always reflect my life as a bit of a roller coaster. You know, like I've had tons of bad shit, you know, happen, but I've also had so much cool stuff as well. And I always think my life just, there's always something different around the corner, and I'm glad, like, especially, you know, I feel like, you know, as I've finished up playing as an athlete, that I've taken opportunities, you know, like I had no vision whatsoever that I was going to be working for Sky Sport and doing this commentary and the broadcasting side of things. And then, you know, the opportunity presented itself, and I think, you know, the 20-year-old Honey would have been no straight away. But, you know, I think the 30-year-old Honey's like, oh, give it a crack, just give it a crack. And that's kind of what I've lived by, is like, just give it a crack, see where it takes you. And so I just try to live my life like that now.
That's a funny story all on its own. Like turning up to the Sky boardroom and your hoodie and track pants and being handed an envelope. And
exactly.
Oh, yeah, the trolling. Has the trolling sort of died down now? Like you talk about this in the book, and there's a couple of messages that you bring up, including token brown face, token female. They've ticked 3 boxes: the brown face box, the girl box, and the rainbow box, shot Sky. And that's really offensive and aggressive stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. It took a little while for me to I suppose, learn to cope with that kind of stuff. And that's what happens, right? You put yourself out there, and you got to expect that people are going to have their opinions. That's what I'm paid to do, is give my opinion, and so people are going to have their opinions. And it was vice versa with the book. You know, I was obviously putting myself out there again, and you know, and you're going to get feedback, and you've got to just be open to it. But I think what I've learnt now is just to take on, you know, what's actually useful for me, you know. And sometimes I read those comments and I thought, far out, you know, that is actually true. You know, like, I've got to lift my game. I've got to stop repeating myself, or I've got to stop bandwagon, or I've got to stop saying absolutely a million times in one take, kind of thing, you know, all of those kind of things. So I know that I take, you know, constructive criticism really well, because I want to always be better. So, but, you know, the shit where you're just getting pumped for, you know, whatever, I'm just like, I've learnt to just be like, oh, I can't do anything with that. I can't change the way I look. If you don't like my top that I'm wearing, or you don't like how my hair's done, or whatever, I can't change that. Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
My words, not yours.
Yeah.
And last one, goals for the future? Like, where do you see yourself at 50?
Well, I'm starting this year. So I'm doing the full-time, full immersion Te Reo Māori at Waikato University. So I just got through my first term. I'm on school holidays, and it already feels like, you know, I've done my first term, and it already feels like it's just changing my whole perspective on the world, you know, having really diving deep into my Māoritanga, into just having... just being real vulnerable to relearning my language, you know, and putting myself out there, and I'm excited for it. And I haven't thought too far past that, because it's been something that I've been wanting to do for, you know, 2-3 years now, and this is what I've solely committed to for this year. It's my number one priority, is to start my learning journey, you know, and see where it takes me from there.
How good. So you and your dogs can have full conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
and hopefully many, 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 many more happy years with Rochelle.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Honey Hireme-Smiler, this has been awesome. We're going to have to do a part 2 some other time.
Yeah, for sure, Dom.
This has been really, really good. How's it been for you?
Oh, I love it. Lovely. Yeah, really enjoyed it. You know, it's so cool to sit and chat with you. Such a fan of the conversation that you've had with so many, and I felt really privileged to be able to come here today.
Yeah, do you enjoy reflecting?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it makes me think, oh, yeah, this is
You've
what I think.
done some shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have. You really have. Hey, this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Heaps.